Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, Blue Jean Nation has obviously been appealing to people because he shows up in January when it's like -10 and we have a pretty full room. So here we are with Mike in a different role, and we're delighted to have him back. Yeah, and a room that's a little more full. So I'm delighted to have you back, Mike, and thanks so much for joining us. And with that, I'll let you take it from here. So warm drink.
Good to be back here again, Doug. Thanks for having me. Yeah, the room's a little fuller than I've ever seen it. Any of the other times I've been here. Thank you all for taking the time tonight and giving Andy and I a chance to share some thoughts with you. And it's been a pleasure getting to know Andy over the course of the journey that we've already taken on. We bumped into each other in the darndest places out there on the campaign trail and have had a chance to talk on a number of occasions. It's been a real pleasure to get to know him, and I'm glad that you got a chance to hear from him tonight. You know, I want to start by letting you know why I let myself get talked into doing this. I'm running for governor because I'm feeling probably like a lot of you are feeling. I am having an increasingly difficult time recognizing Wisconsin as the place where I grew up.
Yeah.
I'm having a harder and harder time seeing this place as the place that I knew, and I see it slowly but surely becoming a shadow of its former self. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think requires all of us to think about getting outside of our comfort zones and maybe doing some things that we haven't done in the past. Maybe taking on some roles that we never imagined we would take on. I think all of us have to think about doing that, and that's one of the reasons why I let myself get talked into running for governor. This is a place that used to be known from coast to coast as a beacon of clean and open and honest government. That's a reputation that Wisconsin had, and I grew up knowing this place as a special place that was known for squeaky clean politics. And we all know that the political culture here has been poisoned and that corruption has been allowed to seep in to our political system, and that leaves an awful lot of people on the outside looking in without a voice, without real representation, without the ability to feel as though their values can be reflected in public policy in Wisconsin because of what's happened to our political culture. And yes, Wisconsin also once was an industrial powerhouse. And now we're a state that is leading the nation in shrinkage of the middle class. Mm-hmm. And economic inequality is at its highest level in Wisconsin since the Great Depression. And our state's poverty rate is at a 30-year high. And yes, Wisconsin is is dead last in the nation, I should say, in new business startups for 3 straight years. We are dead last in new business startups. So Wisconsin has lost its way. But it's not only economically that Wisconsin has lost its way. You go to Kewaunee County or Calumet County, or you talk to people who are scared to death in Greene County or St. Croix County or Bayfield County because they are concerned about not being able to turn on their water faucet and trust that they can drink what comes out. Mm-hmm. I've been in kitchens where people in Kewaunee County turn on a water faucet and what comes out is brown and smells like cow manure. They can't drink what comes out of their own water tap in their own home. They can't sell their homes and leave because nobody wants to buy and come in. They can't sell their small business because nobody wants to come there and take over that business. So they feel trapped. And that's not the Wisconsin that I grew up knowing. And you go to the Central Sands region, and there are lakes and streams that are drying up because of high-capacity wells that have been drilled. A few are being allowed to hog all the water to the point where it dries up the private wells of their neighbors. And they indiscriminately spread cow manure everywhere, and that poisons what water that those neighbors can get. That is a disrespect for our air and our land and our water that is not consistent with the Wisconsin that I grew up knowing. In so many ways, this state has lost its way. And so I feel a duty to step outside of my comfort zone, and running for governor is way outside my comfort zone. But I feel a duty to take on a role that I didn't imagine playing, because we all have to think about how we go about getting Wisconsin back on track. Now, there is a very large field assembly in this race. It's going to be kind of a Baskin-Robbins primary. You know, there could end up being 31 flavors to choose from. Mm-hmm. But there's a large field that's assembling, and they're all very accomplished people. It is a pleasure getting to know them, and I think very highly of all of them. But it does strike me that there is at least two things that I don't have in common with them, or at least most of them. The first thing that I noticed that I don't have in common with them is they seem too comfortable operating within the political system as it currently functions. Mm-hmm. They seem at peace with the political culture as it is, and I'm not. And they may say that the system is broken or is failing us, but they won't do the kinds of things that it takes to lead by example and lead us out of the trap that we're in. And here's, to me, what it all comes down to. It really can be boiled down to this simple fact. Any one of you in this room tonight, any of you, could legally write out a check for $20,000 and give it to me as a candidate for governor. Now, I wouldn't take it, but you could legally offer it, and I could legally accept it. And therein is the problem, because I trust that there aren't people here in this room who have the habit of writing out $20,000 checks and giving them to candidates for office. But there is a certain population of people, a universe of incredibly wealthy and well-connected donors who do have that habit. And here's what I know. Their agenda is different than your agenda. What they want our government to do is different than what you want our government to do. And when candidates continue to play the game as it's been played for years and years, they put themselves in the inevitable position of having to scratch the backs of those who scratch theirs. Mm-hmm. When they take the $20,000 checks from an individual, or an $86,000 check that you can legally accept from a political action committee, those checks come with strings attached. Those checks come with expectations that those officials will do certain things to cater to those interests, to put that agenda into effect, to make their agenda the law of the land here in Wisconsin. And that agenda is different than your agenda. And so I'm not going to take any single donation over $200 in this campaign. Woo! And that creates a challenge. I understand this campaign is going to have to be people-powered and crowd-funded. It's going to have to be a lot of people being willing to give small amounts of money in order to reach the people of Wisconsin with a message of the need to shake up and transform our poisoned and broken political system. Yes, that's a challenge. But I tell you, as much risk as is involved with taking that stand against those transactions, there's greater risk if we keep playing along with that system and keep playing the game the way it keeps getting played year after year. Because I'll tell you this, if money ends up deciding this election, if money rules in this election, some candidate is going to get elected, but the people will lose. You will lose. And we have got to, at some point, decide to break free from that trap. and say, look, this has got to be done a different way. And the only way I know you can really lead is by example. By actually doing what you think is right. And I may fail. I may come up short. I may not have what it takes to inspire enough people to have the faith and the courage of conviction to do what needs to be done. But damn it, we have got to try and keep on trying. We've got to stand up to the broken and crooked system that has been allowed to grow up around us. And the second thing that I notice from those who have assembled to run for this office that leaves me feeling that it's another thing I don't have in common with them is they all seem intent on telling people over and over again what's wrong with Scott Walker.
Yeah.
We cannot win this election by simply telling voters over and over again what's the matter with Walker.
Yes.
We have to be for something. We have to challenge the people of Wisconsin with a vision about what Wisconsin has the potential to become and how we reach that potential. I'll say it out loud. I'm not running against Scott Walker. I am running to try to put our government on the side of living wages for every worker. I want to put our government on the side of health care for all. We have a Badger Care program, but it's available to very few people. I believe that by changing just one word in state law, one word, we could turn Badger Care into a public option that would be available to anyone in the state, regardless of income. And I would push to change that one word in state law. Badger Care should be there for all Badgers. I am running because I believe we need to put our government on the side of affordable and debt-free education. And
Yes! Jesus.
Now, I'm going to date myself here a little bit. I am old enough to remember a time when tuition at the University of Wisconsin was in the hundreds of dollars.
I don't know what that's like.
I wasn't looking for anything for free, but I really appreciated what past generations had done to make education so accessible and so affordable that I could work my way through college and come out the other end with $770 in student debt.
Yeah?
That was possible in Wisconsin because past generations had dedicated this state to making education truly affordable and debt-free. And we should accept no lower goal than to make education as affordable for our kids and grandkids as it was for their parents and grandparents.
Yes!
And I'm running for governor because I want to put our government on the side of bringing high-speed internet to every single household, every doorstep in our state. Yes, I grew up on a dairy farm down a gravel road in Clark County. And if you go down that gravel road to this day, you will see power lines going to every barn and every farmhouse, all the way down the road. That was a public effort, a national effort, undertaken at a time when my parents were still alive. They remember rural electrification and how it revolutionized rural life and the rural economy. You can drive down that road to this day, and yes, you'll see the power lines going to every barn and every farmhouse, but you won't be able to get an internet connection and you won't be able to get a mobile phone signal. So here we are, a generation or two removed from people in Clark County who were voting to have Democrats represent them because of their memories, their appreciation for rural electrification. And today, that same place that was represented by Democrats when I was young is now redder than Waukesha County.
Yeah?
My hometown had the distinction in the last election for governor of giving Scott Walker his biggest percentage margin of victory of any community in Wisconsin. And I think a big reason is that people living there today don't know who brought them electricity. They've always had it. They've always taken it for granted. But they do know that they can't get an internet connection or a mobile phone signal, and they're figuring if government's not going to do anything to help us deal with the challenges that we face and fully participate in them in a 21st century economy, or even fully and meaningfully participate in modern American life, then we might as well just keep government as small as possible and keep our taxes as low as possible. And then, when they're feeling that way, a whole bunch of people are saying they're stupid and are voting against their own interests. No, we got to listen to what they're challenged by and struggling with and make them a better offer.
Yes.
Put the government on the side of bringing high-speed internet to every nook and cranny of the state. And I want to put government on the side of setting a goal that Wisconsin should be the first state in the nation fully powered by renewable energy.
Yes.
We are not even making a half-hearted effort to participate in that race right now. We need to put our government on the side of being a full participant in that race with the goal that Wisconsin will become first in the nation to be fully powered by renewable energy. And I don't know when that'll happen. I don't know how long it will take. But you know that someday a state will reach that goal, and it should be Wisconsin. It should be our goal to be that state. And we are not even making that half-hearted attempt at competing. And of course, I want our government to be on the side of giving every single working person the ability to belong to a union.
Yes.
We now are living in conditions where only 1 out of 10 workers have union representation. So what I often say is the biggest problem with unions today is they don't represent enough people. We should put every worker in a position to be able to have that representation. We should put our state on the side of the idea that belonging to a union should be a civil right.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
And you know, we should put our government on the side of not forgetting so many people who've been left behind. I mentioned having grown up on a gravel road. Well, I can tell you, when I was young, I used to always assume that road would one day be paved because that would be the natural order of progress. The road is still gravel to this day. But that's not what disturbs me. What disturbs me is that we now have townships all around the state of Wisconsin that are digging up paved roads and putting down gravel in its place because they can't afford to fill their potholes. We should put our government on the side of making sure that no town anywhere has to make that choice. And dig up pavement in the place of the gravel. And we should, of course, put our government on the side of saying that no person anywhere in our state should turn on a water faucet and be afraid of what's going to come out.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be afraid to drink what comes out of their water tank. That's why I'm running for governor, is because of what I think Wisconsin has the potential to become. And we need to engage people in thinking about how to reach that potential and not simply telling people over and over again how Walker has followed up or what's wrong with our governor. We have to be for something, not just against someone.
Yes.
That's critical. And then finally, none of that vision, none of what we aspire to as a state is possible unless we commit ourselves to shaking up and transforming our political system.
Yes.
As long as we have a system where these transactions that we've all sort of been conditioned to accept, as long as the $20,000 checks get handed from donor to elected official, those elected officials are not going to act on the kinds of changes needed to bring about that Wisconsin that we can dream about. It will remain an elusive dream. And so, one of the impulses that I challenge you to confront is that impulse that anybody but Walker will do.
Yeah.
And probably a number of you have caught yourselves saying, look, anybody but Walker. But I'll tell you this, money will not win this election. I was in La Crosse not too long ago, and somebody came up to me on a street corner and said another candidate in the race had told him that it would take $30 million to beat Scott Walker. And my response to him was this. I said, well, first of all, if that's what ends up deciding the race, why on earth do you think $30 million would do the trick?
Yeah.
Because Democrats threw $33 million at Walker in the last election,
Yeah.
and he got exactly the same percentage of the vote that he had gotten in the previous election when $22 million was spent against him. And in that election, he got a virtually identical share of the vote as he got the first time he was elected governor, and $12 million was spent to try to prevent him from winning the office. Money will not beat Scott Walker. He will have more than anybody. But simply telling people what's wrong with him won't beat him either. He has shown on multiple occasions he can beat a not Walker campaign as well. We are going to have to put together a grassroots, people-powered, crowd-funded effort that focuses on what this state has the potential to be and how we reach that potential. This campaign has to be for something inspiring, not simply against the current inhabitant of the governor's office. If we do those things, if we challenge ourselves to